Hi everyone, it's Professor Fisher. I apologize that I haven't been in touch sooner, but after looking through this lesson, and actually I did not create this lesson or this program, it seems like a lot of people might be a little bit confused, and I wanted to try and explain this a little bit better, or at least explain some of the code snippets. And then if you didn't get a chance to implement the list detail GUI, if you would do that and then just send it to me in an email, that would be great. All right, so let's just go through this real quick. So it talks about, what is a model view architecture. I'm going to just kind of concentrate on hopefully clarifying some of the code that goes with this and the flow of the application. So this particular application, as you know, is now showing a list of instruments, and it allows the end user to select an instrument and then take a look at the details. Okay, that part of it I think we all get. We can see it here. Here's the list view. There's the detail view. Not a problem. We take advantage of an existing architecture in Java that allows us to work with this thing called abstract table model. So by doing that, and I think that part is pretty easy, it allows you to very simply create the table that you want to show. And the code here is pretty straightforward. You're going to create a subclass. So what that means is you're going to create a class file in your project, and you're going to have it extend the abstract table model. And when you do that, you'll have to implement all of the abstract methods. So in this example, we have here an instrument table model that extends the abstract table model, and this is inside the project. And then you identify the column names. You identify an array list of the type of objects that you're going to show in that list. So in this case, instrument. And you declare an instrument list. Then you have a constructor, public instrument table model, which takes in an array list of instruments, and that's called new instrument list. And you set your variable instrument list equal to what's coming in from the calling program when you instantiate a new instrument table model. Okay, that was a little confusing, but believe it or not, I think that was the easiest one out of all of them so far. There is a little bit more to it. Down here is an example of the code that you'll need. If you have more than 3 columns, you're just going to need to have more values here as far as the cases go. You will have to have that default case, which allows you to return null in case the user is selecting something that's not one of those columns. All right, so I think that one was fine. Now let's go to the next item here. So then it says, in the Vintage Sounds application, the instrument list, so the class called instrument list and the instrument table model are both instantiated in a controller class. So we have this controller class called instrument CNTL. Okay, inside of the instrument CNTL, we're going to instantiate an instrument list, and we're going to instantiate a table model. Again, pretty straightforward. And then it says, finally, the controller needs an accessor for the instrument table model. So you're going to add, public, and then whatever your table model is called. So in this case, I have public instrument table model, get instrument table, and it's just simply going to return the instrument table that you have declared above. Then we need to connect the abstract table model to a JTable. This is done by actually coding all the GUI directly into the application. So if you're following along with the demo, you don't want to use the WYSIWYG editor for your GUI in NetBeans. You just want to go ahead and use the code that's defined here. All right, let me scroll down a little bit more. And you'll see what you want to do is you're going to create, another class. This is going to be your instrument list UI class. Let me just make sure I have that right. So we show the users how they can move between this list. Yeah. So this is going to be your instrument list UI, and it's going to have an init components where it creates a JPanel, and then it creates a button panel. That's going to have the buttons at the bottom. It creates a instrument table, and it says the instrument table is equal to a new JTable, and then it says parent instrument CNTL. that parent instrument CNTL is just whatever your controller is. You're going to create an instance of your controller in the list view that you can use. So it's not another whole controller. We're still only dealing with one controller, the instrument controller. And I think this was confusing. That parent instrument CNTL was confusing, but that's just a instance of the instrument control class. All right. The rest of this is pretty straightforward. You can just use the code that you see here. And now, once you have that set up, we need to be able to go back and forth. But let me just go back a little bit. So one of the problems a lot of people had was, where did this parent instrument CNTL come from? And it comes from, you have to declare a new controller object above the init components, and it's going to just be, in this case, it would be instrument control, or instrument CNTL space parent instrument CNTL, and you would create a new control object. All right, now when you're navigating between the list and the detail view, what's going to happen? The user selects a row. There's a little bit of work behind the scenes to translate that row to know which item it is in the array list. Then you call a method in the controller. So now I'm going to go from my list UI back to the controller, telling the controller which row the user selected. The controller then hides the list view. It instantiates a detailed view, passing the selected row as a parameter. And it also passes in, I believe, the controller. So let's go down a little bit more. So here is the code that we want to add into the list view class. So the list view, the list view is going to actually define the details button listener. And this is the code that you'll need. You're going to have it say int selected table row equals, in this case, instrument table.getSelectedRow, and then you're going to convert the model row. And then this last line here is an important one, where it says instrument list UI. Okay, so that's where you're at, right? You're in the list UI. And then you say dot this dot parent instrument control, because you have that parent instrument control that was sent to this list UI, and you're going to actually transfer control back to that controller, and you're going to execute the method called, in this case, get instrument detail UI. All right, so then if you look back into your controller is going to have this get instrument detail UI, which takes in the selected row. It creates a new detail UI. Now your detail UI should have a constructor that takes in a controller, comma, an integer for this and comma selected row. So here the this is actually indicating a controller, and the selected row tells them which row has the instrument that the user selected. Then you set the list view to not visible, you set it to false, and you set the detail view to true. Now in the instrument detail UI, in the constructor for that class, again you're going to be expecting, as you can see right above it here, this is going to be passed over, and it's going to be a controller object. So in your instrument detail UI, you're going to get a controller and you're going to get a row. You set that variable that we defined earlier, the parent instrument CNTL, is equal to whatever comes in from the calling class. You're going to set the current row to the selected row, and then you're going to select your current instrument. You're going to set your current instrument equal to the controller, which is parent instrument control dot get instrument, and give it the selected row. And then you call init components, and then you have to parse the data into the right fields in your form. So the last step here, and again, right now I'm in my instrument detail UI, is to put the values that you just got from the array list now into the values in your in your form. All right, I don't know if that helped. I really hope it does. So in general, you start out with your main. In the main, you create your instrument control object, and then you can pass in an instrument control object to the instrument controller, where you define the variables. Then the controller, the constructor for the instrument controller, is what's going to actually launch the instrument list UI. And so what happens is when you see the list, if the user selects a row and they click on the button to see the details, so you have your details button listener, it sends the information back to the controller. The controller then says, oh, I know that now I want to switch from list view to detail view, so it goes ahead and makes the detail view not visible anymore. It creates a instrument detail UI so that it can then make that visible. It creates a new instance of that, and then it passes the controller and the selected row and displays the detail. All right, if you're still having trouble, let me know. I can try and put together an example that has all of the codes, so it's not just piecemeal. But let me know. And like I said, I really hope this helps.